Welcome back to Papa's Home. Today, I'm going to talk about my flooring project, and more importantly, I'm going to be talking about all the problems I discovered along the way. Before I go on, I just want to say that I hope you're enjoying the channel. I'm certainly no professional, and I think there's learning opportunities in failure. If you're thinking about replacing your floors or buying a fixer-upper, then I hope you watch this video and learn from my experience. And if you want to see more of Papa's Home, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and make sure to hit the like button so I know to make more videos like this one. So let's talk about the flooring project. To help tell this story, I'm going to show some pictures that I also posted on my new website, papashome.net. I got the keys to the house about 4 years ago in 2016. From a design perspective, the house really needed a facelift, and the first thing I wanted to replace was the floors. I thought that the floors were disjointed and made the rooms feel small. The entry had a 60s vibe and felt dated. The dark laminate floors always looked dirty regardless of how clean they actually were. The carpets were stained and smelled like urine. And the floors were uneven, so I'd sometimes trip as I walked from the living room to the kitchen. So yeah, the floors were kind of offending all the senses. Before starting on this project, there was a few things I had to consider. Since I hadn't moved in yet, I didn't have to worry about moving furniture around. This presents an opportunity to finish the project quickly. I also wanted to change the layout of the home one day, and maybe install a kitchen island. So for my material, I decided to use laminate since it doesn't have to be secured to the ground with nails or glue. Instead, the boards snap together like this, and can easily come apart. So this will potentially save me money if I ever decide to change the layout of the home and install that kitchen island. When it came to the design, I wanted something neutral. I figured it's pretty easy to change your decor, but flooring is forever, meaning that I'm probably never going to go back and replace these floors again. So I want something that'll stand the test of time if I ever decide to sell the home. So I consulted my contractor for design trends and selected these boards. The color is primary light gray and has a fair amount of variation with some warm tones, some knots, and even some black lines. So this will virtually go with any paint color. Because the boards are a lighter color, it'll also hide dust and generally look cleaner. And they're thicker than some of the laminates I've seen. I don't know if that's important, and I hope that translates to increased durability. At least it feels that way. So once I picked out the materials, it was time to review the costs. The contractor wants $10,000 for labor and materials, and said it would take him about 3 days to complete. At that price, I probably could have gotten something nicer like hardwood or tile, but since I may change the layout of the home, I wanted the flexibility that laminate offers. When it came to planning the demolition, I wanted to see what other contractors would charge. One offered to do it in a single day, and said that it would cost $1,000. Instead, I decided to do the work myself in hopes of saving some money. However, it was also important that I complete the demolition work on time, otherwise I'd have to reschedule with the contractor, and that may take a few weeks. So this really wasn't a time to mess around. I discovered several issues during the demolition process. This is where things start to turn a little sideways, so buckle up. To make sure I stay on schedule, I rented a few dumpsters so I wouldn't have to make trips to the dump. Though I was able to get some time back, I lost a few $100s renting dumpsters. That also took up a significant part of the driveway for a few days, which wasn't the end of the world. Once they arrived, the first thing I did was remove the carpets. I kicked up a ton of dust and animal dander while removing them, and even with a face covering, I really had a tough time breathing in there. So what I was using clearly wasn't sufficient. What's weird is that I never noticed the bad odor in the bedrooms until after I got the keys. This explains why the previous owner had the windows open every time I came to look at the property. Lesson learned. Once the carpet was removed, I noticed some small cracks in the foundation. Fortunately, it wasn't serious, but it became pretty clear that the damage was caused by the ash tree that was in the backyard. As I did more research online, I learned that ash trees have invasive roots that grow laterally and shouldn't be planted near a home. Unfortunately, that meant that the tree had to be removed, which would later eat into my savings account. This was again, yet another lesson learned, and also another project for another time. The next thing I had to do was remove the baseboards. The original boards were uneven, didn't match, and weren't installed properly. Typically, baseboards are nailed into studs to secure them to the wall. However, the previous owner missed every single stud, and the paint was the only thing really holding it up on the wall, which was kind of fortunate for me because they were easily removed with a utility knife and a little bit of force. This did raise a red flag in my mind as I started to wonder what other kinds of issues I'd find with this house. On day 2 of demolition, I invited some friends and family to help me out. Together we removed the laminate floors, the tile, and the brick around the fireplace. To be honest, we spent a majority of the day just removing the tile and the thin set from the kitchen. It was so tough that we finally decided to rent some power tools. Though it made the job a lot easier, we kicked up a ton of dust and it got everywhere. This was a miserable job, and I never want to remove tile again. In the end, I spent close to $1,000 and didn't save any money. I'm also willing to bet that my friends and family would have preferred to enjoy their day off, so next time, I may just have the professionals do the demolition. The last thing we had to do was move a few kitchen appliances, and we were done. And of course, that's when I discovered multiple issues near the fridge. This picture was taken right after we moved it, and there's a few things that I want to point out. The refrigerator door didn't open all the way, and that's because it was hitting this shelf on the Dutch door. The Dutch door had to be fully open in order to remove the fridge. When the fridge door fully opens, it toggles the lights, some of the drywall was missing or damaged, and we discovered that some of the original kitchen pipes burst at some point and were later replaced. So I called a plumber who checked for leaks, and he said that everything was fine. Old, but fine. Most of the pipes appeared like they were original to the house, which was built in 1963. Years later, I ended up having to repipe the whole house, just because the plumbing was in pretty bad shape. I'll put a link to my plumbing series in the description below, since that became its own adventure. Lastly, I had to briefly disconnect the oven. I noticed that the previous owner used an absurd amount of putty on the gas line, though I didn't know it at the time. This was a huge safety hazard, and this wasn't up to code. After disconnecting it, we immediately smelled gas, and the shutoff valve wasn't working. So I shut off the gas at the main and called the emergency line at my gas utility company. So after a long, exhausting day of demolition, you could probably imagine how frustrated I am at this point. I think the rep showed up at 9 p.m. and explained that the wrong size fitting was used, and that you never use putty or whatever material it was on these types of connections. The rep replaced it for free and tested everything in the house before leaving. Grateful to have a working oven again, I was finally ready for sleep. But wait, there's more! The front door wasn't closing properly. With all my strength, I just couldn't get the door to latch, and a gentle breeze was blowing it open. Feeling exhausted, I put a few boxes in front of the door and just hoped that I wouldn't get any late night visitors. So finally, the demolition was done, I could go to bed, and tomorrow, the contractor will begin installing the floors. So everything I just told you is the reason I created this channel. This house has been full of surprises, and at this point I've replaced almost everything. That includes the plumbing, the electrical, and HVAC systems. Though I'm proud of these improvements, I can tell you that it's expensive, exhausting, and I still have a few more years of work ahead of me. If I could go back and do it again, I think I would have started with new construction. At the time, I was trying to get a house without an HOA and without Melrose in Southern California. Maybe I'll do another video where I talk about why I picked this house in the first place, but I'm starting to get off topic. Let's talk about the actual installation. At this point, there actually isn't much to tell. The contractor installed all the underlayment in less than a day. The next 2 days, he installed all the floorboards, and we were pretty much done. After looking at his work, I appreciate that everything lined up with the walls, and I also appreciate that all the boards are offset, and that the seams don't line up. Those are the types of details that I expect from a talented contractor, details that I would have overlooked had I done it myself. Visually, it completely changed the look and feel of the space. The bad odors are gone, and with a fresh coat of paint, the space will look completely different. So for this project, I spent about $10K on the contractor, which covered the cost of labor and materials. I also spent about $1K on things like renting dumpsters, providing miscellaneous tools to my friends and family, renting power tools, renting a truck to transport those tools, and even providing food and drink to everyone. Which means I spent the same amount of money that I would have spent if the contractor just took care of the demolition. So next time, I'll probably just have a contractor do it, and I'm sure my volunteers would have rather spent their day off doing something else. Thank you. I'm sorry. If you're interested in seeing more of my projects, please make sure to subscribe to Papa's Home and check out the playlist on my channel. I'm getting back to creating content, and there's a ton of old projects that I want to talk about as well. And honestly, the older projects are more fun to talk about because of the weird Wile E. Coyote construction issues that I had to get fixed. The last thing I want to leave you with is a few things to reflect on. I had no idea about the damaged pipes, the tree roots, or the missing patch of drywall. If you're buying a home, just know that the inspector can really only tell you about the things that they see. They can't really tell you what's under the floors or in the walls. So be prepared to find some surprises if you embark on a journey like this. Because I can tell you financially, I really wasn't that prepared. I didn't know it at the time, but I think I bit off more than I could chew. I thought I could flip this house with some new floors, some paint, and maybe some new doors, but I discovered so many problems and safety issues that I suddenly had to shuffle my priorities. I spent way more than I originally anticipated, and sometimes it just gets really frustrating. Having said that, the house has also risen in value considerably. I also made some money by renting out the bedrooms for a few years. In the end, the balance sheet is looking pretty good, and I think this will be a great long-term investment. I hope you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to subscribe for more, and feel free to comment below. Thanks for stopping by.